The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Across the aisle my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, sat smirking, his lawyer whispering something about fair division. He thought he'd already won. Half my company, half my home, half of everything I built while he slept till noon and called it creative rest. But when the judge asked if I had anything to add, I stood up, calm and smiling. "I do, Your Honor," I said, handing him an unmarked envelope. The judge opened it. He read the first page, then burst out laughing so loudly the entire courtroom froze. My husband's smirk disappeared instantly. That envelope didn't just save me. It destroyed everything he'd built on lies. And the best part, he handed me the evidence himself. If you'd looked at our photos, you'd think we were perfect. Miles and I, the smiling couple at every gala, the hand-holding pair in every magazine feature, the picture of success. He used to tell everyone, "My wife built her empire from nothing. I'm just lucky to watch." And I believed him. Because when you love someone, you mistake admiration for sincerity. You don't see the cracks until they start cutting you. I met Miles 6 years ago at a charity auction. He was charming, disarming, the kind of man who remembered small details like how I took my coffee and what song made me smile. I had just launched my fashion brand then. He told me I was the kind of woman who could turn dust into diamonds. I didn't know he'd later try to take every diamond I made. 4 years, I worked 14-hour days while he managed the household. He said he was writing a book. I never saw a single page. But I told myself it was fine. Marriage was about partnership, right? I bought our house, paid our bills. I even funded his short-lived cafe idea that lasted 6 months and drained $60,000. Still, when people asked what I loved about him, I said, "He believes in me." But belief isn't the same as loyalty. It started with little things. Hidden credit card bills, whispers about a consulting business I didn't know existed, and sudden late-night phone calls. I'd ask, "Who's calling?" And he'd smile, "Investors." Investors never giggle. One night, I found an email he'd forgotten to close on his laptop. It was to a woman named Riley, subject line. "She has no clue." My heart dropped. The message read, "Once the merger finalizes, we'll file for separation. The prenup is weak. She'll owe me half." That's when I realized, my husband wasn't just cheating on me. He was preparing to rob me. I didn't cry that night. I poured myself a glass of wine, stared at my reflection and said aloud, "All right, Tessa. If this is war, you're not losing." Over the next few weeks, I played the part of the clueless wife perfectly. Mail, dinners, even posted a date night photo for the world to see. But behind closed doors I was building my defense. I called my attorney, rechecked the prenup, and dug through every email, every transfer, every business he'd registered in both our names. And what I found was worse than infidelity, it was fraud. He had been using my company's funds to finance personal ventures, all under my tax ID. He thought I'd never find out. He thought I'd fall apart. He had no idea I'd already started planning my counterattack. The morning after I found that email, I called my accountant, Valerie. She'd been with me since my first store opened. Loyal, discreet, the kind of woman who could smell financial fraud a mile away. "Valerie," I said quietly, "I need you to go through every account, every statement, personal and business. Don't ask why. Just do it." She didn't ask. 3 days later she called me back, voice tight. "Tessa, there's something you need to see." When I got to her office, she pushed a folder toward me. Inside were printed bank statements showing transactions I didn't recognize. Transfers from my company's profits to a joint account. Under the names, Tessa and Miles Carter. "I never opened this," I said. Valerie nodded grimly. "He did. The signature was forged. And it's been active for nearly 2 years." I felt the air leave my lungs. "How much?" She hesitated. "Roughly $480,000. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft." I stared at the papers, my mind going numb. Miles had been bleeding my company slowly, cleverly, while pretending to be my biggest supporter. He must have felt invincible. After all, I'd trusted him completely. Valerie leaned forward. "You need to go to the police." "Not yet," I said quietly. "If I file now, he'll bury the rest of the evidence. I need him to think he's still ahead." I spent the next month pretending everything was normal. Breakfasts, business events, late-night movies. Every lie rehearsed with a smile. Then one morning over coffee he said casually, "I think we need a break. You've been distant lately." I looked at him, feigning confusion. "A break?" He nodded. "You've been focused on work. Maybe space would help." I knew what space meant. It meant his plan was ready. So I said softly, "You're right, Miles. Maybe it's time." He looked surprised, almost guilty. But only for a second. 2 weeks later I was served divorce papers. His claim. Irreconcilable differences. His demand. 50% of all marital assets. I almost laughed. Because what he didn't know was that my attorney, Valerie, and I had already built a wall of evidence higher than any lie he could construct. I wasn't just fighting back. I was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The email came on a Thursday evening. Subject line: "Finalize the asset list. Use her company valuation." It was meant for his lawyer. But Miles, in his arrogance, sent it to me. Opened it. My hands shook as I read every line. "We'll argue she hid assets under her brand subsidiaries. Once I get half, sell fast and disappear to Spain. She's too proud to chase it." He'd even attached a spreadsheet. Fake numbers, fake accounts, all labeled under my company's name. It was a plan to frame me for fraud while stealing everything I'd built. That was the moment I stopped feeling heartbreak and started feeling strategy. Called Valerie immediately. "We can't just defend," I said. "We attack." She smiled for the first time in weeks. "I was hoping you'd say that." We gathered every record. Bank logs, tax filings, even the forged signatures on that secret account. Then we hired a private investigator who uncovered something even more satisfying. Miles had been transferring my money to a cryptocurrency wallet linked to his mistress, Riley. When I saw the screenshots, I didn't cry. I laughed. Because greed is always messy. We compiled everything. Receipts, transfers, screenshots, voicemails. Valerie placed them neatly into a sealed manila envelope. "Don't open it until he thinks he's won," she said. So I didn't. Waited. Weeks passed. Miles' lawyer grew more aggressive, sending letters claiming emotional distress and unpaid marital support. Let them. Every accusation was another rope he tied around himself. Then came the hearing date, a sunny Friday morning. The day my husband would try to rob me in public. And the day I'd make him regret ever underestimating me. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and arrogance. Miles strutted in wearing a new suit, probably paid for with my stolen money. He smiled at me like he still held the upper hand. His lawyer began dramatically. "Your Honor, this man supported his wife emotionally while she built her empire. He is entitled to half of." That word echoed in my ears, each syllable a knife. When it was my turn to speak, I stood calmly. "Your Honor," I said softly, "I have an envelope I'd like you to review before I respond." The judge nodded. I handed it over, the same one Valerie had sealed. As the judge opened it, I watched Miles smirk. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering something smug. Then the laugh. The judge actually laughed. A sharp, honest, incredulous laugh that filled the room. "Mr. Carter," he said, still chuckling, "did you truly think you could accuse your wife of hiding assets while committing financial fraud in her name?" Miles froze. The judge continued. "Your crypto transfers, forged documents, and communications with your mistress are all here, including your plan to flee the country. I'm recommending immediate investigation." The color drained from his face. His lawyer muttered, "Your Honor, this must be a misunderstanding." The judge slammed his gavel. The only misunderstanding is your client's belief that deceit equals entitlement. I looked at Miles one last time. He couldn't even meet my eyes. It was over. 2 days after the courtroom, I thought it was over. 1. The judge laughed at him, the world knew the truth, and for the first time in months, I slept without waking in fear. But victory doesn't always mean peace. That morning while making coffee, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. You don't know me, but you should. Something about it made my stomach twist. Minutes later, another message followed. It's about Miles. He used me too. It was signed Riley. The name hit me like cold water. The same name from the email that started everything. Part of me wanted to delete it, block her, pretend none of this existed. But curiosity and closure share the same heartbeat. They both make you walk toward what hurts. We met that afternoon at a quiet cafe on Fifth Avenue. She looked nothing like the glamorous woman I'd imagined. Her eyes were tired, her voice shaky. I didn't come to cause trouble, she said quickly. I came to give you something. She slid a small flash drive across the table. This has recordings, messages, screenshots, everything. He told me he was divorcing you because you'd ruined him. He said you hid money from him and his company. I almost laughed. His company. He doesn't even have one. Riley gave a hollow smile. He told me it was a new project, that you'd sabotaged him. He used that story to get investors. But then he disappeared last week. With all their money. My throat tightened. You mean he's still stealing? Worse, she said. He's running. He emptied an account in Spain, in your name. I blinked, frozen. In my name. She nodded, pulling out a printed transaction slip. He forged the documents. I have recordings of him admitting it. He was planning to vanish after the trial and leave you to take the fall for fraud. Felt like the room tilted. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything but the sound of my own pulse. The man who once held my hand at night had been quietly setting me up to go to prison. Clenched my jaw. Why are you helping me? Riley's eyes filled with tears. Because he lied to me too. He told me he'd marry me when it was over. But when he got the money, he took mine too. For the first time I saw it, the pattern. Miles didn't just betray me. He betrayed everyone who trusted him. I'm sorry, she whispered. I took the flash drive. Don't be. You just gave me the final piece I needed. That evening I drove straight to Valerie's office. She plugged the drive into her laptop, brows furrowing as files opened one by one. Recordings, screenshots, transfers, even voice memos. Good God, Valerie muttered. This isn't just fraud, Tessa. It's criminal conspiracy. Felt strangely calm. Send it all to the investigators. He's already under review for embezzlement. This will seal it. She nodded. They'll reopen the case. And with this evidence, he won't be walking free for long. For a moment, I stared out her office window at the city skyline, glittering, merciless, and alive. That's when I realized something. Miles wasn't my downfall. He was my final business lesson. Trust is a luxury. Proof is power. That night, I poured a glass of wine and wrote in my journal. He thought he was writing my ending. But he just gave me the pen. And for the first time since our wedding day, I felt completely free. It had been 3 weeks since the hearing, and I thought peace had finally found me. The noise was gone. No lawyers calling, no reporters camped outside the office. My company was stable again, sales climbing, investors reassured. I should have felt safe. But peace always feels suspicious after war. Started with small things. An unknown car parked outside my building 3 nights in a row. Emails with no sender names, just empty attachments. Then one morning as I arrived at work, my assistant handed me an envelope. No return address. Inside was a single note. You embarrassed me in front of the world. You think you won. But this isn't over. No signature. No handwriting I recognized. But I didn't need to. I knew it was Miles. My stomach twisted, not with fear, but with fury. He'd taken enough from me. I wasn't going to give him my piece too. Called Valerie immediately. He's trying to scare me, I said, my voice steady. She replied firmly. Then let's make sure he scares himself instead. Within hours, she had already contacted the Financial Crimes Unit. They'd been monitoring Miles since the fraud charges were filed. The officer in charge, Detective Hale, called me personally. Ms. Carter, we have reason to believe your husband fled the country. We're tracking wire transfers through his known crypto wallets. Do you know where he is? Not yet, Hale said. But he left a trail. Arrogance always does. That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window. The city lights flickered against the glass, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to cry. Not because I missed him, but because I finally saw what I'd survived. He had stolen nearly $500,000. He had lied, cheated, forged, and tried to ruin me. And still, here I was, standing taller than his shadow. The next day, I woke to an anonymous text. You'll regret humiliating me, Tessa. You think this is over, but I'll make sure you lose everything you love. I stared at it for a full minute before hitting forward and sending it to Detective Hale. He responded within minutes. We've traced similar messages to a burner phone used in Prague. We're issuing an international alert. For a brief moment, I felt fear creep back. That old instinct that used to keep me small and quiet. But it didn't stay long. Because now, I wasn't the scared wife hiding from her husband's temper. I was the woman who handed the judge an envelope that made the courtroom laugh at him. I was the woman he underestimated. Over the next few days, I noticed more patterns. A fake social media profile pretending to be me. Posting things I'd never write. Spam messages sent to my business partners. It was his last attempt to drag my name through mud. Valerie looked at me across her desk. He's desperate, she said. Cornered men always are. I'm not scared, I told her. I'm just tired of letting him exist rent-free in my head. She smiled. Then let the law finish what you started. Later that week, Detective Hale called again. We've confirmed he's out of the country. He's using aliases, transferring small sums through shell accounts. He's sloppy, he's angry. We'll catch him. Something in his voice sounded confident, final. That night, I went for a walk by the river. The same path Miles and I used to take when we were still pretending to be happy. Back then, I used to match his steps, stay in rhythm, let him lead. Now I walk faster. Alone. Stronger. As I reached the end of the path, my phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. Still think you're smarter than me? My fingers trembled, but I didn't reply. Instead, I screenshotted it and sent it straight to Hale. He replied instantly. Perfect. That's the evidence we needed. Tight, Tessa. He just made his first real mistake. I closed my eyes and exhaled. He was running out of hiding places. And I was done running from ghosts. That night, for the first time, I didn't dream about courtrooms or betrayal. I dreamed about silence. Heavy, peaceful, victorious silence. Because deep down I knew it was coming. Miles Carter's final fall. Detective Hale called me early in the morning. His voice was brisk, controlled, the kind of tone people use when something big is about to happen. We found him, he said. For a moment I couldn't breathe. He's in Madrid, Hale continued. Living under the name Martin Keller. He's renting a penthouse under a shell company. We've tracked several wire transfers from accounts linked to his old crypto wallet. I gripped the phone tighter. So he's still spending my money. Hale sighed. He's trying to. But the bank froze the assets before he could pull them. He's trapped. Trap. That word felt like justice. I wasn't required to travel, but when the agency informed me that Spain's legal liaison would appreciate my presence for testimony, I didn't hesitate. I booked a flight that same night. As the plane touched down, I stared at the city lights below, golden veins running through black glass. Somewhere down there he was hiding. The man who once promised me forever. When I met with the investigators in Madrid, they laid everything out. Surveillance photos. Bank logs. even a lease agreement signed under his fake name. "He's paranoid," said Agent Morales, their lead officer. "He rarely leaves the apartment, but he meets one contact weekly, a broker who helps him move crypto." He nodded. "Can you arrest him soon?" Morales smiled faintly. "We could. But you might enjoy what happens first." That night, they let me watch from the operations van parked down the street. I saw him, my ex-husband, through the high-powered camera lens, stepping out of a sleek black car in a gray suit, pretending he still belonged to the world of power and wealth. He didn't. He entered a cafe to meet his broker. Minutes later, the officers walked in behind him. He didn't even look up until they said his fake name aloud. "Martin Keller, you're under arrest." He froze, then turned pale. And for the first time in years, I saw the real Miles. Cornered, powerless. The officers led him out in handcuffs. He saw me standing near the car, eyes widening. "Tessa," he stammered. I didn't respond. I just watched as the man who tried to steal everything from me was forced into the back of a police van. Not with fury, but with dignity. Because that's what true victory looks like. Silent, certain, unshakable. The headlines spread faster than I expected. Self-made CEO's husband arrested in Madrid for financial fraud. Betrayal and fortune, the Carter case. I didn't speak to the press. I didn't need to. The truth was already louder than his lies. Still seeing my face on news sites again, the same face that had once smiled beside his at charity galas, was surreal. For days my phone buzzed nonstop. Clients called, friends messaged, journalists begged for comments. Valerie said, "You could hold a press conference, clear the record." But I shook my head. No, I don't need to convince anyone anymore. The facts can speak for themselves. Meanwhile, Miles sat in a Spanish detention facility, awaiting extradition. He'd pleaded for bail, but the prosecutor denied it, citing flight risk, forged documents, and international fraud. The irony was poetic. He used to say, "Tessa, rules are for people without imagination." Now, his imagination was confined by concrete walls and iron bars. A week later, I received a letter from the U.S. Embassy confirming his extradition. He would face trial back home. As I folded the letter, I realized how different I'd become. Months ago, I would have wanted to face him again, to say everything he'd made me feel. Now I didn't need to. Some wars end without words, just the quiet sound of justice being served. That night, Valerie and I toasted with cheap wine on my office balcony. "To closure," she said, raising her glass. "To freedom," I added. And for once, the clinking sound didn't feel like an ending. Felt like a beginning. The trial began on a gray Tuesday morning. I didn't plan to attend, but my curiosity won. I sat quietly in the back row of the courtroom, sunglasses on, heart steady. Miles looked thinner, pale, a shell of the arrogant man I once married. When the judge read the charges, fraud, forgery, embezzlement, he didn't argue. He simply stared ahead. During recess, a court officer handed me an envelope. It was from him. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Tessa, you won. I could lie and say I'm sorry, but I don't even know who I am anymore. I spent years trying to prove I deserved you, then punished you for my own failures. You built something beautiful and I turned it into a weapon. I don't ask for forgiveness, only that you remember me as the fool who taught you caution." I folded it slowly. My hands didn't shake. Valerie whispered, "You don't have to read that." "I already did," I said softly. "And I think that's enough." When the trial ended, Miles was sentenced to 7 years. No cheers, no satisfaction, just quiet inevitability. As I walked out, reporters shouted questions. "Ms. Carter, what would you say to your husband now?" I smiled faintly. "Nothing. Some stories don't deserve an epilogue." 6 months later, the past felt distant, like an old movie I'd finally stopped replaying. My company flourished again. I laughed more, slept better, and rediscovered the person I used to be before love turned into survival. Then one evening my doorman called up. "Miss Carter, there's a delivery for you. No sender listed." It was a small box. Inside, a key, a folded piece of paper, and a note in familiar handwriting. "For what it's worth, you deserve your peace. The key opens the storage locker I kept under your name. Inside are the designs, sketches, and early drafts you once thought you'd lost in the fire. Save them. I couldn't destroy what you loved most. M." My throat tightened. I remembered those early sketches, the ones from my first boutique. I'd believed they were gone forever. The next day I went to the storage unit. Inside were stacks of portfolios, untouched and sealed. For the first time I smiled thinking of him, not with love but with acceptance. He had destroyed enough of my life. But somehow this last gesture, however small, proved that even broken people can have moments of decency. I closed the locker and whispered, "Goodbye, Miles." As I stepped outside into the golden afternoon light, I realized I'd finally stopped being the woman defined by betrayal. I was something stronger, the architect of my own peace. Sometimes revenge is loud, but real justice is quiet. Tessa didn't just win her case. She reclaimed herself. She learned that forgiveness isn't letting someone back in. It's closing the door without hate. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who underestimated you? Tell your story in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic real-life confessions of resilience and redemption.